Hi guys. So I wanted to share a kind of a cool spirit message that I got, or I consider it to be a message or a sort of realization, a conversation that I found really interesting, that I felt was related to tarot, and I'll explain. And that's why I'm sharing. I thought someone out there might find it interesting. And then I got a validation on this a few days later, which is always really cool. And so I just thought I'd share. So there's a movie called The Sound of Metal that's out right now, and it's really good. And I'm not giving anything away by saying what it's about. It's about a heavy metal drummer who loses his hearing, or he starts to lose his hearing, and it's that story. And the actor is so good. I think his name is Rez Ahmed or something. He's up for Best Actor for an Oscar. Deserves that nomination for sure. Although Sir Anthony Hopkins was incredibly good also this year in his movie, which was also so good, about a father going through Alzheimer's. Incredible. Both of these movies are so incredible, and they show something that I'm sort of tying in to a spiritual message here that I feel like I got about communicating. They're both interesting and actually similar in a way that they show how the human experience can change and shift so that suddenly you feel like you're on the other side of basically like a realm where, I'll just focus on the sound of metal, because it's much more complicated when you're talking about Alzheimer's, dementia kind of separating, because it's very hard to find that communication link. It becomes so difficult because you're losing the ability to communicate with each other. And that's what also happens in the movie where the guy is losing his hearing. And it's so interesting the way the film is done, the directing, the cinematography, the sound, really, because it starts to feel like this, like you're leaving, like you almost think of it as the hearing world and the non-hearing world. And you can be a hearing person around people who are deaf, and you're the outsider because they're communicating just fine. And then, the other way around, if you're losing your hearing and you're the deaf person around hearing people, you can feel like you're in a separate world. And that, and that can be very sad on either side. But the thing that bridges the worlds is sign language. And it was so incredible watching, and I realized the cards are like a sign language, that you can learn in order to communicate. And I know, you might think that's not really like such a revelation to call tarot, to realize, oh, tarot is a sort of sign language that you use to bridge two realms. That might seem kind of obvious that it is. But for me, I just felt like I understood it in a different way in that moment. Well, and part of the reason for that is because it made me feel like, similarly in the movie, the deaf community and the hearing community, there's this there's a different experience, okay, of course. And it made me feel like, similarly with the spirit realm, it's like right there. It's just that the difference being more drastic in that there's also no physical body, and there's no voice box. You can't have this conversation. You have to find a different way to communicate. And so I guess just mostly it was just the feeling of, wow, in that moment, feeling as if that there isn't such a long distance between us and say the spirit world, that it, and I, you know, I've heard this always. It's, oh, they're right there. Your loved ones are right there. Or, you know, your angels, your guides are right there. And it's always like, really? I don't know. It feels really far away. Especially if you've lost a loved one and you want that person in that room with you and you're like, no, they're not here. It's not the same. But I just felt like that was the message. Like, it's very similar to the feeling he had of realizing that it's kind of just a matter of living in a new experience. It's just different. And that's sort of what I felt the message was. Like, as far as the distance between us and spirit, it's just different, you know? And that the tarot cards can be like a sign language. So if you're willing to learn the language, and like I said, tarot, of course, isn't the only language that spirit can speak, but if that's a way that you want to communicate, you know, you can start just with learning the language in its most, you know, basic, like by the book form. And then from there, you take the basic meaning of the card, like Two of Cups, and then from there, you know, which means partnership. And then from there, oh, that's so interesting that I pulled this, because, you know, maybe this is, like I was saying, that sign language of coming together. This, how cool is that? Being able to be partners with, for instance, like we're talking about now with spirit, partners in communication, because you're learning a common language that can be used for opening up that channel. And, oh yeah, so I was saying there can be the basic meaning, but then you feel into it a little bit to add that extra context, like how do you mean this? And then based on the context of the question, or in our case, what the conversation we're talking about, it clicks and you say, oh, I understand what you're saying by this. So I don't know, I just wanted to share that. I thought that was so cool. Oh yeah, and so then a few days later, after I had already had that thought and was kind of like ruminating over it for a few days, and was thinking about sharing it here because I thought it was an interesting way to understand tarot. And then I saw King Kong, another, you know, it's what you expect it to be, a fun movie. And I'm not giving anything away, but there is sign language in that movie as well. And I just thought, how interesting that you know, 2 movies in a row where this has been an element of that movie. And I just felt like it was kind of a sign. And I also felt kind of like, okay, I'll create the video and put it out there, because maybe someone out there, maybe that is helpful. If someone's thinking about starting up tarot, but they think, well, I don't think I'm psychic, I don't know if I'm psychic or something like that, that you could think of it really as a shared language. And then from building upon, once you learn the general definition of a card, it's just a matter of reading into it a little bit more, like you would with a person who's in front of you. And I sort of do live by a rule that the tarot cards are always right. Which is sort of a faith that you have, really. And that helps a lot also. To just have faith that the card you turned over in the order you turned it over is the right message. That the difference is in, you know, you could just simply, it doesn't mean you'll always read it right. And a lot of times in card spreads I do, if something turns out different, I'll keep my mind on that card and say, well, what did that mean then? If it wasn't, you know, what I thought it meant. And I just feel like there's always an answer. There's always an aha. I see what that meant. I read it in this other way because that was the most obvious, you know, way of reading it or whatever. And, you know, I've thought about other ways that spirit can speak to you, even if you're not using tarot. Like, people talk a lot about repeating numbers. And sometimes I think that a number, like for instance, I always think 1111 is saying like everything is lined up, everything is aligned, you know, because it makes sense, the shape of the 11s. But then another number can just mean something to you for whatever reason. Other signs from spirit for me, I get heat in my head, which by the way, I've gotten all day today every time I open this video to edit. And of course, there are the classic chills or goosebumps, and sometimes I get a tiny bit dizzy, as I do think energy can have a swirling motion, which makes sense when you think of the chakras, which swirl when activated. And feel free to share in the comments if you have any interesting spirit signs or signals that mean something to you. So it's that same thing, like I think there can be a universal language, but also a unique language to you. And I feel like that also similarly with the cards, in that a card can take on a meaning for you and spirit will know that and be able to, so you've formed a bridge with that card, you know? And some people it's, you know, like when my grandpa died, he told my mom, look, like I'll come around as a bird, you know? So that was always a way that my mom could feel like my grandpa was coming around, was as a, well, how funny that my channel is Little Sparrow Tarot. That's grandpa, maybe that bird connection runs in the family. So yeah, so like animals and that sort of thing is of course another type of sign language, but I just never thought of all of that as a sign language. And just like this card meaning that connection, I just felt that it was an interesting way to think of tarot. And I think they love it as much as, you know, we do. It's like they want to connect as well. And you know, maybe we're moving into a time when we're meant to be connecting more closely. And maybe we can eventually feel like the same with spirit. We're not that far apart. You just have to know the language. And while it does help to have, oh, I just saw a little spark. While it does help to have universal definitions, it'll grow also with you and spirit to say, well, you know what this means because you've decided that in your head or whatever. So let's just for fun add a couple cards. See what we get. Ah. Interesting. Justice. So we're talking about making that connection. This Three of Rods is like the seeking. You're looking out over the ocean, for instance, and that's sort of us, and maybe spirit as well, feeling far, far away, but wanting to connect. So that's sort of where we come from. Here's the connection we're making with tarot or whatever language it is of your choice. But I think tarot is a wonderful language because there's so much to it. There's storytelling, there's archetypes. Justice. It's interesting there. This Page of Cups, playfulness, I see it here. I do think that is a wonderful element of it. And I think sometimes when you take it too seriously, it can really hinder you. Let it be light and playful. It's a new friend too. Make new friends with your spirit guides. Let them be, I'm almost seeing this as like this fish kind of on this girl or guy's shoulder. Like let it be a little friend that you adopt, and let it be light and playful. So interesting, watching back, I realize also this is a human and a fish, two different species who live in two different realms, the water realm and the air realm, or land realm, with a major language barrier, but here they are, they've become friends and confidants. And I think ultimately, as this is a future card, it's telepathy that has grown, an inter-realm telepathy, and maybe that's the message of the future. You know, it's making new friends. It's finding a new language and making new friends and connections, and yeah, it's like new love. See, like I have my little cheat sheets that I come to sometimes, and you know, there's plenty of them. There's a great book where you can really get into it. I love this book. But, you know, you can find the definition, but it's not always going to give you an answer. You base it on the context and the feeling you get to say, okay, I feel that. That takes a little more practice, but you get validation. Like in my readings, I would feel things that before I started sharing them, I would feel something and that would be my conclusion. And then if I saw it play out, I knew like, okay, I had connected, I had nailed it in that read. And basically from there, you learn the feeling of that hit. Like in baseball, you just know when you hit that ball perfectly. So yeah, there's sort of a story. I always do past, present, future in these positions, which is part of the, you know, sort of the sign language, I think, the positioning. We seek, we connect, and then we have a new love, a new friend. So, and then the justice underneath, there's the balance there. I wonder, I don't know, this takes me to like, we weren't supposed to be so separate from spirit. And so this is like making right of something that went wrong in this world, maybe. I don't necessarily like to suggest that, you know, things have been off in this world, because maybe it was meant to, maybe there was some learning for it, but it feels that that the connection is a necessary balance that is coming for us to the earth. It's not a favor. It's our it's our what's the word? It's our like birthright to be able to connect with spirit. We shouldn't be so separated. We're not supposed to be so separated. We're supposed to be connected. So like a time is coming that is more balanced and just. So it's just like, I don't know, I feel the message is kind of like, so just reach out. Find your language. Don't think that you have to be psychic or hear, you know, because some people are like mediums, and they will get pictures in their heads, or they'll hear things in their ear, which aren't real, you know, human voices, but they'll hear like a word that'll pop into their head. And that is just that is a language developed between that person who has that, you know, sense, that extra sense that works for them. Maybe that can, I know that like, was it David Johnson, you know, says you can develop this, the pictures he gets and all that. And I do think with tarot, I will get words that pop into my head. So it's like opening that channel and showing, you know, that interest, I think can really start to, and like I said, once I started doing these readings, I would get those dreams where the card would be presented in my dream state, that was trying to tell me something. It's like, it's that language. It's like we have a language now to speak to you in that isn't going to, I mean, dream language exists also, but the cards are just their own unique way to connect and communicate in this shared language way. So, and because spirit is so, I do believe that spirit can be much more complex in like, you know how like a poem can be really short, but it has so much meaning and layers to it. And I feel like that the cards are like that also. And so you need sort of a complex language that, and you know, I'll sometimes trip over our language trying to communicate what I feel like are like bigger concepts. But that's also the fun of it. It expands your mind and your understanding of things. So let's look at a few cards under here. I'm getting like King of Pentacles. I'm like, what does hard work and money have to do with this subject? And I'm seeing it with this 10 of Cups. And that's another thing. Adding a card can really help when you're not quite sure. Because, for instance, the King of Pentacles can mean so many different things. But what I'm feeling here is, you know, like I say, why would we have been separated from spirit? You know, because this justice is telling me it's time for this coming together to occur. I think there's a matter of hard work. This person just like feels like I need to go work in the, to get my food and to get my money. And I think maybe we got distracted with that, with like survival. And this 10 of Cups is like a completion card. And it's very satisfied completion. It's almost like we're reaching a time when maybe we aren't gonna have to focus as much on survival, or, we can find a way to have a society where people their backs aren't breaking all the time, and they can have more spirituality. A lot of times this 10 of Cups for me is like the age of Aquarius, the Aquarian age where everybody gets enough of everything. And the Empress, I tie in a lot with that age of Aquarius also, like the feminine aspect of God, coming in for some of that balance. It's like she's been like left out. And maybe that's like the King of Pentacles. Like there was like this patriarchy for a really long time. So maybe like the end of the patriarchy is the beginning of balance, the beginning of a world that isn't so cutthroat or back-breaking or like just for the dollar. And because you do feel like people who are able to connect more or, have developed their psychic abilities or connect with spirit more, can be man or woman, but it's best, I really seem to notice, if you're a very balanced in your masculine, feminine aspects. It doesn't mean gender, it just means open. Like, I think that the female aspect is sort of like allow yourself to be open and receptive. So that's interesting. It's like that this period is over with that 10 of Cups, the completion, and the Empress. It's like the age of Aquarius. And this 10 of Pentacles is like a, what is it? Inheritance. So there's a sort of spiritual inheritance coming to us. And I just had to add these three because here's that Temperance card, which is similar to me to the Justice card a lot, with that balance. That this does indicate there has been possibly an injustice in how separate we have been from spirit. And maybe the patriarchy didn't want us to be in touch with spirit. Of course, I do not mean any offense to any men out there, because I'm really just speaking of a certain type who wanted that authority and didn't want others to have the authority, like the spiritual authority, for instance. Oh yeah, like religion would take away. Religion can make you connect to spirit, but it can also sort of take away, especially if you are a woman, because in a lot of religions, it's the men who are the spiritual ones. So it's like, you can see a lot of patriarchy, male dominance sort of in the religions. And so maybe they wanted to be the spiritual masters, and it was an injustice. Because there she is. She's like, no, you forgot about me, the Empress. Your time is over. This 10 of Cups, completion. And it's a time for the Empress to start getting her balance into the society, which includes a lot of this more spiritual connection, I think. That is more individual. You don't have to go to a priest, for instance. And the inheritance, the 5 of Cups, that loss, pain, and then Temperance. So it's like, the inheritance, like, it feels like one of those lines from the Bible or something. I mean, what is it? The meek shall inherit the earth or something. Or, yeah, something like that. The pain, the loss could be in the separation we have felt for so long. It hurts a lot to feel separated from spirit. I'm getting a little like dizzy on that, which is always makes me feel like I'm onto something. It hurts a lot to be separated. That's a lot of the pain we all go through in life. It's just like, what are we doing here? And then this helps. And then Temperance, again, with the balance. Watching back, I remember the Temperance card is also an angel, which validates the spirituality of the reading, and I looked up the meaning to see what else I might get, and the first thing I read is the Temperance card shows a large winged angel who is both masculine and feminine, which I thought was so validating to what I was getting. And the traditional Temperance angel also has 1 foot on the land and 1 foot in the water to show both the earthly connection and the spiritual flow. The balance between earth and spirit realm. Find that in between. And so yeah, what I felt the message was is that tarot can really help you get there because it's a language. And again, if you don't like tarot, maybe you just like to watch tarot, but look for that language in your life, in that connection, because you'll find there's a language between you and spirit that you can form and find and improve that communication and connection so that it really feels like a friendship. So that's my message. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.